Welcome to this week's IG Live. We have a real treat for you today. I'm so excited because I've invited back on two of my favorite guests and really some of our favorite people in the industry, and that is Steph Littlebird and Violet Duncan. Now, some of you may remember I've interviewed them both individually before, so be sure to go back and check out those interviews. But today I get to talk to them both together, which is amazing. And that is because they're both award-winning creators. They have amazing books that they've created, and now they've come together to create a new picture book. You may also notice I have this weird blank spot behind me. Normally, this is where I have posters for this is where I have the poster for our classroom kit. Here you can see our poster for Read Your World Day back in January. We'll have a new one of those soon. But we also have a brand new classroom kit cover with artwork by Steph Littlebird. So we're going to be revealing that live here in a little while. Kit itself will be live tomorrow, but we wanted to go ahead and give you a sneak peek at the gorgeous cover art that Steph did. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I am very well. It's good to be back with you.
Yes, I was just trying to remember. I know I've interviewed you both recently. I think ours was earlier this year, and Violet's might have been a little maybe late last year. Hold on. Just inviting her here to join us. But maybe we could go ahead and start. I think probably everybody knows who you guys are, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
I'm Steph Littlebird, and I am an artist. And this year, I debuted as an author with my first picture book, which is called "You Are the Land." And for the project that we're talking about today, I was the illustrator for Violet's beautiful story. And so I'm just I'm basically just somebody who loves to help other people tell stories as an illustrator. And so it's totally an honor to get to help Violet on this one.
Violet, as I said, people probably already know you, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Tansay everyone, Nitsugasun, Kayaski Sigisquil, Dafamio Kisagaw Namitotak. Violet Duncan, the author of the book that we're talking about today, and I'm from Kihuan Cree Nation, Plains Cree and Taino Nations.
Well, it's such a treat to have you both on here. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the new book, Where the Wind Blows. Unfortunately, we'll have to wait until February to get to read it. But those who haven't seen it yet, I know you just did the cover reveal maybe like 2 days ago, something like that. So it's very exciting. But why don't you tell us, maybe Violet, you want to talk about the book and where you got the inspiration from?
Sure. So Where the Wind Blows is basically a story about connection. It follows a young boy named Starboy, and he smells the flowers being carried on the wind, and he wonders where else the wind has traveled to that day. And so it's about the relationship that we have with the land, the relationship that we have with each other as we follow wind's journey from the south all the way up to the north, which is the exact same journey that my children and I take as they travel from Arizona up to my home territory in the summertime. So I'm very familiar with the route. And I actually wrote this story for my oldest son. We were picking flowers one day, and I said, I smell something. It smells so good. And he goes, let's follow where the wind had found it. And I was like, ooh, I love that. And so we followed our noses and found this beautiful lilac tree that my mom had planted in the garden. And I have a photo with him where he's down on one knee and he's giving me the flower. And that was just like the inspiration. And I just love it so much that it's finally come to fruition and he gets to see his story.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And Steph, so when you received this text, what was your reaction? And then how did you start to conceive of how you do the artwork for it?
For me, it was like an immediate yes. Particularly the idea of the personification of the land. It's something that I, talk about in my work all the time is like seeing the land as a relative and seeing the land as having personhood. And so, to me, that was deeply resonant with the work that I do. And so, Also, I love that this book really lets the landscape be the main character. Even though Starboy is part of this, it's like really about the landscape and about where the wind is going. And so it was so fun for me because I love to draw landscapes. I love to draw nature of all kinds. And so I just basically got to do all the things that I love to do in this book. And so, and honestly, like getting to work with Nancy Paulson on another book. She did my very first book as an author. And she's just like such a dream to work with and really has like made me a better artist by working with her. And so I feel like Where the Wind Blows is definitely the best of my work so far. And so I'm so excited to share it.
I mean, the
I
artwork.
got chills. Stop.
Well, Violet, one of the things that struck me when I saw it, now obviously I haven't actually been able to read the whole book yet, but just in the concept of the book and seeing some of the interior pages, is when you talk about the wind, it's like there are no borders. Again, this concept of interconnectedness between us, and it's about the landscape, but also the people who are living in these different environments. And it seems like now we're at a time when there's so much focus on separation and policing borders. So how does this concept of the wind that can kind of go everywhere, how does that kind of go against all of that?
I hope that it will open caregivers' minds to what our young children, what our young readers already understand about the world. The wind is a reminder that the lines that we draw and the maps that we draw are not the way the world sees itself. And so I know in kindergarten right now, as kids are going back to school, they're learning about the migration of butterflies. And so they're not asking questions about where they get stopped and patrolled. They understand it. They understand that there's this beautiful way of migration. And then we go and we look at the moon, and the moon shines for everyone. And we look at our waters and our rivers, and they are unapologetic as they move. And so this is a reminder to us, big guys, that this is a natural part of the world. And I also look at the wind as a storyteller, reminding us that these stories are in the land, in the flowers, in the butterflies, in the birds. And it only takes us to kind of open our minds and remember that the land carries its own stories as well.
I love that idea that this is something the kids already understand, but we need to be reminded. And stuff like you already touched on this, but this does just tie right into so much of the other work that you've done about the our interconnectedness to each other and to nature. So how does this book help kids and I guess adults also understand that we're all a part of something bigger?
I think that it's just so special to go through the story and see the wind essentially, exploring all of these different landscape and sort of meeting all of these different people or creatures. And so I think it's like this celebration of nature and all its beauty and wonder. And that to me is like that's why we love nature because it is so wondrous and magical. And there are like Violet said, all of these stories in nature, just spending time in nature, you will learn things by being with it. And so anyway, I just feel like it's a real celebration of that. And young people, they know how to access joy and that sort of connectivity much easier than their elders do, unfortunately. And so I feel like if we talk about these things when they're younger, then their connectivity will be sort of unmitigated by those filters that come in, when you get to be an adult. And so just having more openness about these concepts, I think, will be beneficial in the long term in terms of like caring for the land, addressing the climate crisis. Like, we need our young people to know their connection to the earth, no matter what culture they come from. We're all humans. And so, because of that, we are extensions of the land and we have a responsibility. And so, I think if we cultivate that wonder and appreciation for nature young, then we'll raise better stewards than, the previous generations have.
Yes. And so, Violet, you mentioned that you had in mind like a specific route. that the wind would travel in. That, so how much back and forth did you guys have? I know a lot of times there's not necessarily interaction between the author and the illustrator. As far as like, did you have specific things that you wanted to make sure we saw in the illustrations, or did you leave that a little open?
Okay, so in the beginning, I have three self-published books, and I am not an artist, so I use photographs. These were on purpose so my children and other Indigenous children can literally see themselves represented in literature. And it was really important to me as a young mom to have that, to have these stories talking about resiliency and joy and love and seeing grandparents and aunties and all that good stuff. So that's what I put in there. And when I wrote Where the Wind Blows, I tried to do the illustrations and it just wasn't happening. It was like, I'm like, this is not, it's not even a standard. It just wasn't telling the story. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. And that was the first time that I was like, I need to bring in the big guns, and that's what I sent out to my editor. And I found Nancy during the pandemic, and I was like, let's give it a go, figure out what a cover letter is, and figure out how to make this look like I'm submitting it, and Googling how to submit. And she loved the story, and it was actually Nancy's suggestion. I had recommended Steph as one of the illustrators because they had a small list of Indigenous illustrators, and so she was a recommendation of like a bunch of other Indigenous illustrators to add to their roster. But it was Nancy that was like, what about Steph Littlebird for this? And I was like, do you really think so? Do you really think she would do this? And I was like, oh my gosh, I absolutely do it, do it. And so definitely on my own, I could not do this. So there was nothing that I could do. And so I put all of my faith and love into Steph Littlebird, and she, my goodness,
Yeah.
like I jaw is on the floor. I get to see the illustrations, and I got to see the back and forth, and I got to see what copy editors were saying, and I was like, okay, what? Like, I'm like, she gets the vision, and she just brought it to life in a way that I could never have imagined. So there's nothing that I was like, oh, I really need this, because she just did it. And I think that is also because you come from an Indigenous lens, and you get it. You get the what I'm trying to share in my words. And that's something that I feel that I would have had issue with coming from a non-Indigenous illustrator. And so it's really, really important for me to put my faith into someone that comes from the same background and that can understand what I'm trying to say through my words. And it's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we should mention that. I don't even know if we had talked about this. I mean, how special to be working with another Indigenous creator. And even though, like you said, as I can't remember what you mentioned, like no matter what culture you come from, there are other cultures that have this concept of interconnectedness, but I think we most associate it with Indigenous cultures. And Violet, I was looking on both of your Instagrams to see, what you posted recently, and you were talking recently about your kids carrying on the tradition of hoop dancing, and I think your son even wore his dad's regalia. So just this idea of passing on traditions and ideals to the next generation, either through things like that or also through this book, even though it doesn't. I don't know if you would say it comes from. I mean, it comes from a specifically Indigenous perspective, although it's for everyone. But why is it so special to be able to pass on these traditions, these ideals through a book like Where the Wind Blows?
So with the regalia and the outfits that we wear and we pass them down, what an honor and a gift to be able to wear something that your parents and your grandparents wore. That's actually something that I wasn't given. My mom made all of my stuff, all my little moccasins, and as I would grow, and my little outfits. And because my dad attended the Indian residential school, and my grandmother attended Indian residential school, and all of my aunties, and so passing down items, they were either very protected ceremonial items that you would have to be somebody who could access that. But little beautiful things, it just didn't, I wasn't able to do that. And so to be able to hand something down to my children and to see them and to make it a living culture and to put it into the next generation. And for me, even like these kind of earrings, like I am, when I wear my earrings and I go to the grocery store, like I just feel so cool because I was able to do that even as a teenager. And so I think it is so empowering and powerful to be able to get these pieces from your parents and grandparents. And even if you didn't get that, like I didn't, to make it and to wear it and to pass it down to your cousins or your nieces and nephews, to show that our culture is alive and to show that that indigenous stories are joyful and full of possibility. So when we see these stories, we don't have to delve into the past. Everything is present. This is what we are presently doing. This is how we share our love of land and story and connection in a modern way, and however we want to take it going forward, and how our children want to carry this story forward.
So beautiful, so beautifully said. And to switch gears a little bit, Steph, you were, I mean, talking about the importance of books like Where the Wind Blows. You were posting some about the connection between literacy and just critical thinking in general, and specifically about things like racial bias, and that there's a real connection between, say, how people vote and their level of literacy. Can you talk a little bit more about why literacy is so important?
Yeah, you know what? As a person who works in community and I interact with people of all different backgrounds all the time, even though consider myself to be a very progressive leftist person, I have to work with people of all different backgrounds because I'm a person who works in community. And what I found is that the more exposure you have to the world, the more opportunity you have to read stories about other people, stories about other places and times. It doesn't even have to be an academic reading, like just being engaged as a reader, being someone who continues to be passionate about books throughout your life, not just when you're in your educational years. That can be a huge contributing factor to your ability to critically think, to be able to distinguish between something that's propaganda versus something that's well researched or comes from, say, a primary resource versus a second or third. And so just thinking about the idea of being more conscious of literacy, and I think we've taken it for granted, but when over half of the country is only reading at a sixth grade level, that means that over half of the country is basically like at a disadvantage when it comes to discerning the world around them and the things that may be taking advantage of their vulnerabilities. And so when people are less able to access those cognitive abilities, less able to critically think through their fears or their potential, sort of misinformation, it leads to perilous situations, much like what we face now with fascism. And so that's why, fascists defund education, get rid of libraries, burn books, or as Amazon is doing, buying up rare books and then shredding them, because knowledge is power. As cliche as that sounds, it doesn't even, it's like just literally being interested in the world and reading about the world and in its different facets and challenging your perspective develops your brain
Right.
into something stronger. So anyway, as we are in the business of getting the audience of young readers, it's something that we should be thinking about in the stories that we tell, in the information that we're translating through our books. Like, we need to be more strategic and also be really pushing to maintain these programs in our communities.
Which leads right into our cover reveal because Steph so generously did the artwork for our this year's classroom kit. We put out a classroom kit every year, and this year the topic is right along those lines. It's media literacy because I think we know that's in addition to book bans, probably the biggest impact on our kids' literacy today is social media. So how do we teach kids to think critically in a digital world? So let's see if I can do this without ripping it. I set it up ahead of time, but this is
Yay!
people can see this. It's amazing. I just love the colors. It's so bold. And again, teaching kids to think critically in a digital world. So Steph, you have done this gorgeous art here. Maybe I'll sit like this. You've done this gorgeous artwork for it. Can you tell us when we gave you the topic, how did you come up with the idea for this cover?
Oh my God. I was like immediately in when you told me the topic because obviously I'm making counter propaganda and thinking about, how the information that young people are consuming on their phones is like impacting their well-being. And they know now that, young women who are on social media are developing eating disorders much younger now because they're seeing all of these really unhealthy body standards. And so we need to be more protective of our young people and what they're ingesting, what they're being fed by all kinds of people on the internet. And as a person who deals with a lot of crazy people on the internet, I can tell you, you don't want your kids exposed to that stuff. And so like media literacy is so big and we do not talk about it enough, and we don't talk about making kids feel empowered and being able to discern what they're looking at. And so that, I mean, is so important in this world that we are living in. And if we want our kids to be armed with the tools to make good decisions and also just like research a fact, figure out if that's even true or not. So oh my gosh, I was just so excited to be part of this because it's such a passion of mine. Young people, I want them to feel empowered and I want them to question the stories they're told by the powers that be. That's very much rooted in Native culture to listen to the voices of your community as opposed to always taking what's being fed to you. And so yeah, that's very much rooted in our community and culture, as well as just my work as an artist.
Well, we appreciate it. It's just gorgeous artwork. And as part of it, this is all going to be a free download. Like I said, it'll be live tomorrow. And as part of that, you can print this poster for your classroom, for your home library, or wherever you would like to put it. And it has resources, just like Steph was mentioning, and then just critical thinking in general, how to interact with AI. There are a lot of website resources that we include that you can do fact checking on stories you find online. A lot of really great information. So we appreciate all of our partners, but especially this lovely artwork. So look for that tomorrow where you can get your own free copy. And thanks to both of you for being on here. I'm so excited about your new book. And maybe before we close, you could each, if you want to give a shout out to any other projects that you have coming up that you'd like to tell people about. Violet, would you like to go first?
Sure. So right now I'm in the middle of editing my next middle grade book, which is mayhem and crazy and wilderness and survival. And so I like to go all in when I'm writing. And so we were in South Dakota and we were eating spruce tips because that's how the boy survives. So all my children are like learning how to eat. And then we had raw eggs this summer because I needed to understand the slipperiness and the texture. And so I'm like, sorry, kids, this is what we're doing. And so I'm in the middle of that and trying to remember that taste and feeling. And so it's a lot of fun. I do have this really cool storytelling webinar. It's called The Theorem of Storytelling. And that one is, I believe, October 17 with the Society of Children's Illustrators and Writers in Arizona. So if you see me posting about that, I would love for you to join. I think it's free. But if it's not, then then maybe not, but
Yeah.
still come and check it out. It's really cool. It's like an indigenous centered way of writing, and definitely experience is a part of it. You don't have to eat spruce tips or raw eggs to get immersed, but I definitely talk about how we can use what's all around us to contribute to our writing and become better writers. Yeah.
Amazing. How about you, Steph?
I am in the midst of finishing a book called The Longest Walk, which is about the history of the indigenous protests that sort of went across the country when we had essentially like upended the legislation that banned us from practicing our religions, and so we fought for legislation through this series of protests. And so the book is about indigenous protest, and that is like at the heart of everything I do. And so, and then the initial protest that started the longest walk was the Alcatraz protests, and so getting to illustrate a book about this part of history that I have always like held on to as sort of aspiration and something to admire and aspire to, that getting to illustrate it is just like so amazing. And again, just getting to tell our community's stories is so important to me. And so I'm living my dream over here. I'm just getting to, work with amazing people like Violet and tell amazing stories. So I am I'm doing the best I can over here.
Well, we are so happy that you are, because we all get to benefit from the work that both of you do. So thank you both for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. Appreciate it too. Take care.
Thanks. And for anybody who's watching, if you joined us late, this will be up on Instagram in just a few minutes, and later we will have it on our YouTube channel. Bye, everybody.
Bye.